The alarm blared at me. Not the hateful kind, more like a nudge. Time to get this show on the road, buddy. But I was already a step ahead of it. Eyes open, the anxiety was waiting. It's funny, with this damn disease, I should be tired all the time. Instead, sleep's a rare visitor. Downstairs, it was the usual chaos. Kids shouting, cereal flying. My wife, Kate, was in her usual whirlwind, packing lunches, yelling that someone's backpack was missing. I used to love this, the organized madness, how we were a team getting everyone out the door. Now, I flinched with each shout, like it was all aimed at me. My cell bust. It was him, the best friend, the guy I'd known since we both wore braces. Important thing tonight, there was this hesitation in the words. He didn't want to spit it out on text. Not a good sign. Work was a blur, clients whining, spreadsheets blurring into gibberish. At the back of my mind, the countdown was on for that evening meetup. Important, could mean anything. Business opportunity, his wife, Lisa, and her latest hobby? But there was an edge to his voice, a weight, made the whole day feel off kilter. At home, Kate seemed off too. I tried to help, ask about her day, but every response felt curt, like a forced smile. Guilt pricked at me. Have I been so wrapped up in doctor's visits and treatments that I haven't even noticed her pulling back? Honey, remember that trip to New York? That crazy comedy club? I was reaching, trying to find that spark we used to have. She looked at me, a flicker in her eyes. Yeah, that was fun, but her voice was flat, and she was already looking away, packing leftovers into a plastic tub. The space between us felt wider, like it wasn't just tonight's conversation with my friend that was hanging heavy. Finally, the kids were in bed. A silence I used to crave now edged with dread. The doorbell, when it finally rang, made me jump. Standing there, he looked smaller somehow. Not his usual brash charm offensive. Even his smile seemed forced. Hey, man, come on in. I forced the words out, but there was a lump in my throat. It was like when you're waiting for test results, knowing they might be bad, but also somehow hoping maybe this whole thing was a giant, cruel joke. So, what's the big deal? I tried to sound casual, but my voice was a half octave too high. He shifted uncomfortably, fiddling with a beer bottle like he was a kid on his first date. It's Lisa. He mumbled it out, like hoping the floor would swallow up the name. Suddenly, Kate was there in the doorway. Lisa, is she okay? That old concern in her voice, the one she'd had over the years when Lisa got into her various scrapes, the failed craft business, the yoga instructor phase that lasted all of 2 weeks. He cleared his throat. Listen, this is kinda awkward. I, need to talk about something. Maybe Kate should. The words trailed off, his eyes flicking towards her, but then back to me. It was that look that sent a chill down my spine. The way you wouldn't meet her eyes, the same way you avoid a dog who's just been kicked. Suddenly, important, wasn't about business troubles or marital spats, it was about something far more personal. Hey, I'll grab another beer, yeah? Kate was already moving, oblivious to the tension hanging thicker than smoke. I wanted to shout for her to stay, or to go, I wasn't sure, but my mouth was glued shut. Lisa, she's been unhappy, he finally sputtered. He wasn't even looking at me now, staring at some point on the floor like it held all the answers. We've been having problems, you know that. But I thought, his voice faded again. The silence screamed in my ears. And then, like a punchline to a joke I didn't get, she needed someone to talk to. Things got a little out of hand. Those words, hanging in the air like a poison gas. My brain was trying to make sense of it, but every connection led to a dead end. Suddenly, the phone rang. Lisa's ringtone, the cheesy one that used to make us all cringe. It felt like a cartoon bomb, ticking down in my living room. He fumbled to answer, and even from across the room, I heard it. The panic rising in her voice, words spilling out, too fast to catch them all. Something about texts, her phone, needing proof. The blood roared in my ears. Every muscle in my body tensed, waiting for what? Confirmation? Denial? I didn't even know. Can I talk to Kate? Maybe she. There was desperation in Lisa's voice now, desperation aimed at my wife. Sure, hold on. He shoved the phone at me. I wanted to chuck it across the room, scream, anything but hear whatever the hell was coming next. But I took it. Kate, it's me. Lisa's voice, normally so bubbly, was shaking. I, I need to show you something. I think. I think he's been seeing someone. I just found messages on his phone. There was a long pause. Then Kate spoke, slowly. What are you talking about, Lisa? And just like that, my whole world shattered. The world felt tilted. Every light seemed too bright. Every sound too loud. I was on autopilot, going through the motions, but it was like I was floating outside my own body, watching this broken puppet version of myself stumble around. Kate's voice cut through the fog. Everything okay? You seem out of it. Was that pity in her eyes? Disgust? Maybe she'd already figured it out. Maybe this was all part of their little game. I forced a smile, just tired, long day, you know. Bullshit. But I had to keep up the act. I couldn't let her see. See what? Was I terrified she'd realize I knew? Or terrified she wouldn't? Dinner was a blur. The kids were chattering about school, about some game they were playing online. Kate was asking them questions, acting like the concerned mom. And me? I was trying to will myself to eat, to swallow down the rage rising up in my throat. He sat there, at my damn table, pretending to be my friend when all I wanted was to smash his face in. Once the kids were in bed, normality shattered. He stood to go, finally looking awkward. Listen, man. I know this is a lot about Lisa. I'm sorry. The word sorry felt like acid on my skin. I couldn't take it anymore. Sorry about what exactly? My voice was low, a growl I didn't recognize. His eyes flickered to Kate, then back to me. Look, I screwed up. I shouldn't have said anything. Forget it. Okay? Just wanted you to hear it from me first. That's all. He was backing away, but I wasn't letting him off that easy. Oh, you screwed up? I forced a laugh, edged with something dangerous. So what? Little chats with my wife, that's just screwing up. Silence. Even Kate was still now, a frozen statue at the counter. He fidgeted, then finally mumbled something about misunderstandings, stress, how they both needed someone to talk to. I felt the shaking start in my hands. Talking? Was that the word he was using? For hours of calls, for texts I couldn't unsee, for the lies swirling around me like a swarm of wasps? I wanted to lunge, to feel my fists connect with his lying face. But some cold, calculating part of me whispered, wait. I needed proof. Not to convince Kate. God knows what world she was living in, but to crush them both with it. The night was endless. Each tick of the clock, another tally mark in my mental torture chamber. I replayed moments. A sidelong look, a shared laugh, her hand lingering on his back at parties. Were they right in front of me the whole time, and I was too blind, too comfortable, too sick to notice? The next morning, I faked another smile through breakfast, then made it to the doctor's appointment. Talking about test results, treatment options, it was all gibberish. My real diagnosis was burning behind my eyes, and no medicine could touch it. Work wasn't a sanctuary anymore. It was a prison, but it was still easier than facing the minefield back home. I caught myself replying to a client's email with a string of expletives instead of figures. Time to go, before I lost what was left of my sanity. I texted Kate, something vague about staying late, buying takeout. On the way out, I risked a glance at my phone, praying for a slip-up, a message I could use against them. Instead, there was a notification. Kate, want to meet for a drink tonight? My stomach lurched. Was she playing dumb? Celebrating? Was this another piece of their sick game? One thing was sure. I wasn't missing that opportunity. I couldn't stand the silence of the house anymore. The ticking clocks, the creaking floorboards, each sound was a reminder of the gaping hole where my life used to be. My sanctuary was contaminated, filled with whispers I couldn't unhear. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through our old photos. Those smiles, those vacations, those moments of what I thought was happiness. They all felt like some cheesy movie poster now, advertising a life that was a complete lie. I zoomed in on every picture, hunting for a flicker in her eyes, a forced laugh for the camera. Was I just imagining it? Or was there a coldness in her expression I'd never noticed before? A text bust. It was Lisa. A simple question. Can we talk? Like old times? Sharing recipes and gossip? I almost threw up. Then I texted back. Yes. The enemy of my enemy. Wasn't that the damn saying? We met in a faceless coffee shop. At first, it was awkward, filled with stilted apologies on her part, barely contained fury on mine. But as we started to talk, to compare notes, something shifted. It wasn't friendship bonding us together. It was a cold, desperate need for truth. Dates, times, lies that were eerily identical. Pet names and text messages. Mentions of restaurants they'd apparently gone to on nights I was at appointments. Piece by piece, we rebuilt the narrative of their affair. Each discovery was like a shard of glass in my gut, but with it a strange clarity. I had to force myself to stay focused. Anger was a fire that might burn hot, but it would burn out fast. I needed evidence, something solid and undeniable to throw in their faces. So, when Kate suggested a family outing, pretending normality was still an option, I played along. The zoo. My girls were laughing, pointing at the monkeys, and my insides were twisting with every forced smile, every touch of Kate's hand on my arm. I wanted to scream, shatter this false image of the perfect family. But I also studied her. How often she checked her phone. The flash of worry when I suggested sitting on a bench that was away from the main crowd. She thought she was playing me, but I was starting my own game. Back home, the mask slipped. I ignored her attempts at conversation, pretending to doze on the couch while my phone subtly recorded the background noise. A stray question, a mumbled phone call from the other room. It might be nothing, but it also might be the one slip up that cracks everything wide open. I had become the detective in my own nightmare, and I wouldn't rest until I knew the whole, ugly truth. My head was exploding. Each late-night data diving session was another self-inflicted horror show. There it was, in black and white. A photo of Kate at some fancy hotel, timestamped the day of my last chemo session. Phone records. Long conversations when I was tucking the kids in. Supposed work calls during soccer matches where I cheered them on from the sidelines. Every new fact felt like a hammer blow. It was the sheer arrogance of it that sickened me. That complete disregard for our life, our kids, or was that just my bruised ego talking? I needed answers. Not from her. Not yet. I had to play this smart. Maybe he would provide the next piece. So, I texted the friend, offering a shoulder to cry on, masking it as concern. The meeting was tense. In some warped way, I felt a pang of guilt. Here was this man whose life was also imploding, and I was circling like a vulture. Subtle digs, careful questions. I tried to read him. Was it genuine guilt, or a well-rehearsed act? Were there cracks in his facade? Had he started to suspect Kate, or was she playing him too? I didn't get the answers I wanted, but I got something. A flicker in his eyes, a moment of hesitation when he said he was trying to fix his marriage with Lisa. It felt like a lie, but was it one he was telling to me, or to himself? The next gut punch came from the one direction I never anticipated. Kate, she was changing. Not the guilt-ridden glances and forced silences I'd half expected. Instead, there was a new confidence to her. The late nights spent at the office, the sudden interest in workout clothes and expensive perfume. It was like she was daring me to bring it up, bragging that she was untouchable. And then, the worst of it started. Little comments about my moods, about me being distant and wrapped up in my illness. I'd heard the word, gaslighting, thrown around, but never thought it would apply to me. Yet here we were, her playing the concerned wife while undermining my sanity at every turn. The only bright spot in the darkness was a text from Lisa. Panic laced her words. Apparently, her husband had turned suspicious, was demanding answers, threatening to leave her. The irony was a bitter pill to swallow. It felt like justice, but it still made her my ally, for now, at least. Decision time. I could run, pack up, take the kids, and disappear. Could confront Kate, force the truth out of her. The image of that showdown brought a grim satisfaction. But no, neither felt right. Deep down, there was a burning need not just for escape or messy revenge, but for a different kind of victory. I wanted them to see me see them. I wanted them to watch their smug world crumble, knowing I was the one who pulled the trigger. Work trip, honey, upstate, one night thing. She mentioned it casually, tossing it into the middle of dinner like it was about packing a lunch and not another brick in the wall she was building between us. Something snapped in me, not rage, but a cold, clinical curiosity. The timing lined up too neatly with one of his supposed late nights with a client. I wasn't going to ask for permission, wasn't going to play my assigned role of trusting fool. That morning, as she hustled to get out the door, sleek and put together with her new work wardrobe, I simply said, "Call me later." I waited until she was a few blocks away, then started the engine. My hands weren't shaking. It felt eerily calm, like all the anger, the pain had frozen over. He lived further out than I expected. A nice suburban house, the kind Kate and I had daydreamed about when we were younger, before reality set in. I parked down the street, out of sight. The waiting game was agonizing. Every car that passed made me jolt as if I were the one doing something wrong. Then I saw them, emerging from his front door, not hand in hand like some cliche movie moment, but the worst kind of mundane couple, throwing bags into the trunk, him giving her a peck on the cheek that might have been friendly, might have been much more. My knees nearly buckled. Not at the fact of it, the proof had been there all along. But the utter banality of it was what cut the deepest. My life, our kids, the marriage I'd fought to keep whole even when illness was eating away at me, reduced to this. To carpools and rushed goodbye kisses. I needed more. A reckless part of me wanted to storm up, kick his door down, make their little world explode on the manicured front lawn. But I held back. I needed her to feel safe, secure in their stolen happiness. Let her arrogance be her undoing. The confrontation with Lisa was a different beast. This time it wasn't tentative coffee shop chats, but a raw outpouring of pent-up fury, hers echoing my own. Turns out, the lying bastard had a whole history I knew nothing about, flings and manipulations that mirrored what was happening to me. And yet, in that perverse way, instead of diminishing the betrayal, it made it even more complex, even darker. The final straw broke in the most unlikely place. My daughter, playing with their daughter in the park, the two chattering like only little kids can. Overheard snippets, innocent yet chilling. "Mommy goes to Uncle Mark's sometimes." And just like that, my role of detached observer shattered. This wasn't just about me and Kate. It was poison seeping into my children's lives. That image of his hands on Kate was now mirrored by a horrifying realization. Had his hands been on my little girl? The thought ignited a rage so pure, so blinding, it scared even me. Kate came home that night to a changed man. No more forced smiles, no more playing dumb. "Pack a bag," I told her, my voice cold. "You're leaving." She stammered, tried to turn on the waterworks, the guilt act, but I cut her off. "Don't insult me, I know everything, save the theatrics for him." She froze, a flicker of fear in her eyes. Then came the defiance, the icy mask slipping back on. "Know what? What do you think you know?" I laid it out then. The cold, hard facts, the dates, the lies laid bare. And finally, the threat. "Confess it all, or I will. I will show your parents, his wife, the whole damn world, the kind of person you really are." The ultimatum hung in the air. This wasn't justice, not really. It was war, and it had only just begun. The confession was like a rotten apple, looks fine on the outside, but cut it open and it's crawling with worms. She admitted the affair, but spun a tale of loneliness, of me neglecting her, even tried to blame the damn illness I was fighting off. She downplayed how long it had gone on, swore there wasn't real love, just a moment of weakness that spiraled out of control. A part of me wanted to tear that facade apart, to yell the ugly truth until she crumbled. But instead, I nodded slowly, the concerned husband playing along. "I see," I said, the words tasting like acid. Let her think she tricked me, that she was one step ahead in this twisted game. That victory, however fleeting, would make her sloppy. The next morning, it was all business. I wasn't calling her bluff, wasn't seeking forgiveness. There was a lawyer's office to find, paperwork to pour over. The language of divorce felt surreal. Assets, custody, words that belonged in courtroom dramas, not my own life. But behind the clinical discussions, there was a white-hot rage fueling my every move. This wouldn't be some messy breakup, it would be calculated destruction. I played the concerned husband role to perfection, feigned worry, hints of wanting to fix things, even an awkwardly attempted hug. Each fake gesture was a piece of bait, lulling her into a false sense of control. In the background, I was a machine, gathering evidence, screenshotting old text she thought she'd erased, checking bank records for hotels and restaurants I'd never heard of, finding the cracks in her hastily woven web of lies. The plan started to crystallize. Not a dramatic, screaming confrontation, but something far more devastating. It wasn't just about her, it was about exposing him as well. The two-faced friend, the concerned confidant, he'd be dragged into the spotlight too. I started picturing their reactions, the fear in their eyes when the world they thought they had constructed shattered around them. The ideal setting presented itself almost on cue. His wife, Lisa, was throwing some anniversary bash. He'd want to be there, playing the happy husband. Kate would be on his arm, of course, the picture-perfect couple. It would be a family event, both sides invited. I sent the RSVP with a grim smile. The stage was set. The night of the party, I felt an odd calm. Each smile I offered to Kate, to his fake concerned parents, was fuel for what was coming. I meticulously laid out my evidence. The printouts, the damning photos, and the final touch, a recording I'd made of one of their late-night phone calls, their hushed voices dripping with lust and deception. Then, the performance. Not the tearful husband, not the enraged victim, but the man with the smoking gun. I asked for everyone's attention, the tone almost jovial. Then I laid it out. Dates, times, places. I watched Kate's eyes widen, saw the color drain from his friend's face. His wife started to shout, but I spoke over her, reading out texts filled with words no one could misinterpret. The fallout was messy, as I knew it would be, but the core of it was the satisfaction of watching their lies detonate. My own family, standing by me, the look of disgust on faces that had smiled at our wedding. The truth, the ugly, undeniable truth, hanging heavy in the air, that was all that mattered. It was over, but it didn't feel like it. The party devolved into chaos, shouting matches, tears, slammed doors. In the eye of the storm, I stood numb. That rush of righteous anger was fading, replaced by a bone-deep weariness. My carefully constructed plan had detonated, but the wreckage included my own life. The social fallout was swift and brutal. Our tightly knit group of friends disintegrated overnight. Calls and texts came in, people taking sides. Some stood by me, shocked and horrified. Others, well, turns out loyalty to Kate ran deeper than I'd ever imagined. And then there was his crew, his wife, furious but also humiliated, and a few of their mutual friends who shifted uncomfortably, unsure of who to blame. His facade crumbled faster than I expected. The denials, the weak, we were just friends, act, it was pathetic to watch. Then came the pivot to, my marriage was dead, defense, like that somehow excused it, like sneaking around, breaking promises, and destroying lives could be waved away with a sad shrug. The strangest thing was the outpouring of support from unexpected corners. Lisa's older sister, who I'd barely met, offered a hesitant shoulder to cry on. A neighbor I barely knew started dropping off casseroles. Turns out, shared betrayal creates strange bonds. The true devastation was inside my own home. My girls, faces pale and confused while Kate packed up her things with icy defiance. Her attempts to paint herself as a victim fell flat, but the damage to them was already done. How do you explain to children that the world they knew was a lie, without also shattering their sense of trust? I muddled through, trying for simple words that wouldn't wound them even deeper. Lawyers became the new normal. Custody battles, financial wrangling. It was a jargon-filled nightmare that felt like salt in my wounds. I wasn't fighting for revenge, but for a future where my kids knew they were safe, loved, and protected from the chaos she brought into their lives. Outside our bubble, the gossip was relentless. Some painted me as a wounded hero, others as a vindictive fool who'd aired his dirty laundry. People I'd smiled at in grocery stores now glanced away. I could see them wondering, Judging, was I the victim? Or was this awesome twisted game I was playing? The hardest part, the one no one saw, was the silence in the house at night. The empty spaces where laughter should have been. The photos I couldn't look at, couldn't bear to throw away. It was the absence that cut deepest, a reminder that even as I'd won this battle, the war inside was far from over. Court dates blurred together. The judge's voice, a drone in the background as lawyers volleyed barbs I barely understood. Finally, there was a paper, signatures required, and the whole ugly mess was official. I'd won. I had custody, the house, enough money to rebuild some semblance of a life for the girls and me. But winning didn't feel much like victory. It felt like surviving a train wreck, battered, bruised, unsure if I could even stand upright again. My illness, the thing that had always been the big enemy, seemed almost secondary. Emotional scars went bone deep and wouldn't heal on any doctor's schedule. We packed up what was left of our life. Our once cozy house now a hollow shell. The girls tried to be brave, but childhood optimism can't entirely mask the sting of a world turned upside down. Settling into a cramped apartment, surrounded by boxes, felt more like defeat than a fresh start. It was the little things that ambushed me. A half-empty bottle of shampoo in the shower, a favorite mug left behind with a chipped handle. It wasn't sadness I felt, exactly, but a cold hollowness. The past seemed both crystal clear and blurred at the edges, like those old photographs where time has distorted not just the colors, but reality itself. One night, that hollow feeling turned into a need to purge. I gathered every photo I could find of her and me, not the staged ones, but those goofy selfies, the silly smiles from vacations where guardrails were down and laughter easy. It felt like sacrilege. Yet I struck a match and watched them curl into ash. The phone rang, startling me. It was her, Lisa's sister. Just checking in, she said, her voice hesitant. The girls, are they doing okay? There was a tentative warmth in her tone that took me off guard. Later, lying in the dark, I replayed the conversation. Had it been concern or pity? Was she sizing me up, wondering if I was spiraling into some tragic stereotype? The bitter, divorced dad? The thought sparked a flicker of dark humor. There were a hell of a lot of stereotypes I could fulfill now, none of them flattering. The future was a hazy maybe. There were good days where the girls and I explored our new city, making a game of finding the best pizza place and the weirdest ice cream flavors. And there were days when getting out of bed felt like a Herculean task, and the past clung to me with suffocating weight. Trust, that essential core of any relationship, felt like it was locked away in a vault I'd lost the combination to. One afternoon, my phone buzzed with an unexpected caller ID. Lisa's sister again. Want to meet up? Coffee? She offered, with an awkward catch in her voice like she was stepping way outside her comfort zone. I sat there, staring at the phone, the screen going dim. It felt like a decision point. Retreat deeper into isolation, or take the smallest of steps toward rebuilding a world that didn't revolve solely around my own pain. It wasn't about romance, not yet, but maybe it was about the possibility of connection, of realizing I didn't have to face everything entirely alone. The ending of the story isn't tied up with a neat bow. It's me, standing in the doorway of that coffee shop, unsure if I'm walking into a much-needed respite or another kind of disaster. It's the kids' laughter from the other room, proof that life marches on regardless of my own scars. And it's a faded photograph, tucked into my wallet. The four of us on the beach, smiles wide, the seagulls blurry in the background. It's chicked and worn, but it's a reminder. Even if the perfect picture has shattered,